All right. Hey, good morning, folks. Once again, we are back taking a look at the tropics. Today is Thursday, June 30th, 2022. This is your daily tropical update. Once again, in a video format. We have a lot to talk about here this morning. It is a very active time in the tropical Atlantic, Pacific, you name it. It has been popping over the last couple of days. We have three areas to watch here in the Atlantic, including one semi active storm, still potential tropical cyclone 2, soon to become tropical storm Bonnie. We have an invest off the coast of Texas, and we have another wave following Bonnie, or whatever we're soon to call Bonnie, out here in the Atlantic. We have a spot to watch in the Eastern Pacific, and we have a new tropical storm in the western Pacific. So it has been an active period. As we see in the tropical hurricane season for the Northern Hemisphere, it typically comes in ebbs and flows, and we are certainly in a high point right now. So let's go ahead and get to all these systems. Atlantic Hurricane Center's 5-day outlook for the Atlantic Basin. Our little friend here by Texas has a 40% chance to develop before moving on ashore here in the next day or so. Potential tropical cyclone 2 racing off to the west, and we have the wave behind that with just a 10% chance to develop. We'll start with potential tropical cyclone 2. This is now the longest lived potential tropical cyclone on record since we've been using this nomenclature. Again, I think the Hurricane Center is going to go back and re-investigate how they do this because this is really confusing. This thing's been a PTC for like 4 or 5 days now. Like, okay, is it or is it not? you know, and the big thing is just that it hasn't been able to close off a low-level circulation center because it's been racing off to the west at 20 to 25 miles an hour, and it's just very difficult for a weaker storm to actually get to the textbook definition. Although for about the last 48 hours, PTC2 has looked much like a low grade tropical storm that just happens to be moving pretty fast. So it's I think something we're going to go back and look at because this public messaging is pretty confusing, and it's not great. But anyway, PTC2 is going to come off the coast of Colombia here today and move out into the open waters of the southern Caribbean, where intensification is likely. It'll very likely soon be named Tropical Storm Bonnie, and then it still could potentially become a hurricane as it moves into Nicaragua sometime early on Saturday or late Friday evening. Hurricane watch is still up for parts of the Nicaraguan coastline, and this is going to move pretty quick across Central America. And this isn't very rough terrain, and there's a big lake in Nicaragua. It's probably going to move over, so not expecting this thing to fall apart. We are going to carry this what will be tropical storm or hurricane Bonnie at this point across the landmass, and it's going to pop out to the eastern Pacific, where if you're curious, it will still be named Bonnie. The rule is if the system is on one side of a basin and it falls apart and then reforms on the other side, it's a different storm. That's what happened earlier this year with Agatha. It moved into Mexico, across the Yucatan, across Florida, and then became Alex way over here. But Bonnie is going to likely hold herself together across this. It's moving fast. It's moving over a very skinny part of the region, and it will likely hold together, and then it will still be Bonnie out here, where she could even become a hurricane on day 5 in the eastern Pacific. So not very not very useful information, but fascinating nonetheless, I think. Overall, not a big deal though for us. Nicaragua, of course, will experience Costa Rica and Nicaragua will experience heavy rain and potential for tropical storm and even hurricane conditions. So definitely something to watch out for them. Satellite presentation of the storm today. Beautiful outflow structure. This really could have had a potential if it was moving a little bit slower and was just a little bit further north, and maybe it wasn't early, late June, early July. But you can see a nice little low-level center here this morning. It definitely looks like a tropical storm. Not the greatest one ever by any means. A little bit of curve banding to the north. It's lacking some thunderstorm activity, but it's doing its thing. So we're gonna watch this move off, and this is likely where we're going to see this thing intensify over the next few days. Most of the intensity guidances bring this up eventually to a hurricane about day 5, but even before that, Hurricane Center thinks this could overachieve a little bit in the next 36, 48 hours and become a little bit stronger and potentially graze Category 1 intensity. So, folks down there, look out, but no threat to the eastern U.S. Let's go ahead and move over to our friend off the coast of Texas. This is Invest 95L over here on Tropical Tidbits. Take a look at the satellite presentation here this morning. A weak low-level center spotted this morning south near the South Texas coastline, but this is not very well organized. This is a pretty weak low-level center, and this is likely probably going to die off, and either a new one will try to form under all this bubbling thunderstorm activity where all the better moisture flow is, or it'll just kind of stay this big mess on it we have here. But regardless of this one, if it gets named or not, this isn't going to be strong. This isn't going to be a strong tropical storm or anything. At best, it may be a tropical depression or a very, very weak tropical storm. But it looks like right now, rainfall, the main threat. You can see some of these thunderstorms moving into eastern Texas and far western Louisiana here this morning. Intensity guidance all keeps this below tropical storm strength. But rainfall is going to be the main concern or benefit in some case. In the case of this one, 3 to 6 inches of rain forecast for parts of eastern Texas and extreme southwest Louisiana. And this is actually good news. Look at the Texas drought monitor here this morning, guys. They have been in an exceptional drought or extreme drought on the eastern Texas coast, exceptional drought further inland. So very beneficial rain coming here. This isn't enough to completely bust this drought, but remember when we talk about drought, we have to have a surplus of rain on top of what we've already should be having. So if you expect 5 inches of rain in the month of July, if you get 5 inches of rain, you're not denting your drought from the last 4 months or 6 months where you were another 5 inches behind. You know what I mean? So this is going to be a beneficial extra dump of rain and should help to ease some of the drought conditions. So there could be some flash flooding, um, for short periods of time, but generally that the water levels are low and the area should be able to handle most of this rain. You will see short-term flash flooding, but any long-term flooding is not likely. And this will overall be beneficial for the coast of Texas. Dreary couple days coming, but good news overall. Again, could develop, could be named, not going to be a big deal from the perspective of wind or surge. This is going to be a rainfall event. Finally, our wave following PTC2. This is just a wave out here in the Atlantic, not an invest yet, just something that the Hurricane Center is monitoring. Just a 10% chance of development. This is a big, broad wave, and it's not terribly well organized. Take a look at the GFS forecast for Saturday. The wave should be moving up into this region. Models at this point still haven't developed the wave at all, so it moves from here to here over the next 48 or so hours. But you've got a very strong upper trough through the region, and then you also have some of the outflow from PTC2, and your storm's going to be right about here. So between the two, this thing's going to get blasted with a bunch of upper level wind shear out of the west, and it's going to be pushed pretty good by those trade winds out of the east and the low levels. You're going to have a speed shear and a direction shear. It does not look like this thing's going to have much of a chance to develop. So it's a well-defined wave. It's something we'll watch, but I am not expecting much out of the wave following PTC2 either. This will likely just glide up into these islands as a moisture surge and then move off and do whatever. So not worried about that at all. So that covers the Atlantic Basin here this morning, guys. We'll real quick go into the Pacific Basin. Eastern Pacific, we do have a 60% chance of something developing off the coast of Mexico. This won't bother anybody. Well away from land, not going to be a big deal. One of these fish storms for the Eastern Pacific, but it could be their fourth named storm already, which is pretty active. We get 4 named storms in the month of June. That would be pretty. I'd imagine that'd be not maybe not record, but it would be probably close. I would imagine in the Eastern Pacific. That's a lot of activity for early on in the season. Although we have to remember their season starts 2 weeks before ours does. And over in the Western Pacific, we finally have signs of life. Tropical storm Chaba formed yesterday in the South China Sea. This is going to move up to the north, move into southern China sometime here in the next couple of days, and could become a typhoon, or will become a typhoon, it appears. 70 knots forecast at peak by the Joint Typhoon Warning Center. This is just interesting because of how little activity we've had over here. The last active storm was April 15th. This is a basin that walks away year on year with the overall cyclone activity and was radio silent for 2.5 months, basically. The end of June, we have our second or third storm form, but we had one decently strong typhoon back in the middle of April, and then we had a little weak tropical storm that didn't last very long, and then that's it. It's been quiet. It's been unbelievably quiet the last 2 months. So it looks like some signs of life in the Western Pacific, and there's yet another system that looks like it may form off the coast of the Philippines, and then some more stuff out here. So looks like this basin may wake up, and that may be the signal that the Eastern Pacific and the Atlantic may be on the tamper down as the global tropical scene sort of shifts its energy back and forth. Maybe this is a sign that we'll be moving into a quieter period as we get into July, which would be kind of the expectation. But anyway, guys, what I got for you today on your tropical update. Again, none of these systems really seriously threaten the U.S. and beneficial rain for Texas from 95L. PTC2 or Bonnie stays well south of us and crosses into the Eastern Pacific and eventually moves off as probably a hurricane. And then this little wave behind PTC2, not expected to have a whole lot of a fighting chance, but we'll keep an eye on it. And after that, it looks like there's not much off Africa. And overall, looks like things are fairly quiet in the Atlantic Basin after all this gets done. So that's what I got for guys today on your tropical update. As always, thanks for watching. Have a good one.